Hello, my friends, and welcome to Grow the Goodness in You. I'm your host, Coach Quiggy. I am a self confidence coach now, and I am here mostly in support of young leaders, but I hope that this is supportive and encouraging and inspiring and practical for anybody and everybody out there who is listening. My hope is to inspire you and give you the tools to develop deep, unshakable self confidence. That's not confidence over another. That is confidence that we all get, deserve, and can have and cultivate within ourselves. It's deeply self loving, it's empowered, and ultimately it's in service of the greater good. But before we can serve the greater good, or in order to serve the greater good, we have to serve our own goodness within. Let me take a sip here. And let's pause for a moment. So, if it's available to you, if you're not driving a car or operating machinery, I invite you to take a moment to close your eyes, relax your shoulders, wiggle your sits bones in your seat, find a comfortable seated position, and take a nice deep breath, breathing in through your nose and letting it out through your mouth. This time taking 2 sips in through the nose, filling up the lungs, and then letting it out of the mouth. One more time, 2 sips in through the nose, and letting it out of the mouth. Feeling your feet on the ground. Feeling the outline of your body. Not judging, just having an open awareness. Curious and accepting awareness of what's present for you, what sensations are most noticeable. And noticing yourself breathing. Relaxing your jaw, relaxing your shoulders, again, if they've crept up to your neck. And then when you're ready, slowly opening your eyes and just taking a moment to reconnect with your environment, just noticing a shift in your energy. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit more grounded, a little bit more receptive, and I'm going to take another sip, this time of water, because turns out drinking your coffee protein shake doesn't actually make you less dry in the mouth. Probably going to need a few of those sips throughout, so don't pardon my interruptions. Anyways, today I want to share a little bit, or a lot of bit, medium bit. We'll keep it. I could talk forever about this topic, but I want to share a little bit about my journey with weight and confidence. And ultimately, the point that I want to make is that while our appearance and our body and the health of our body can contribute positively or take away from our sense of confidence, true confidence is not conditional on how we look. When I was a young boy, my parents split. Very toxic relationship when I was a child, and I turned to emotional eating when my dad left. And from the age of maybe 8 to 10, I ballooned up real quick. And by the time I was 10 years old, I was obese. And this kept up for a while. I was very, very lucky to be gifted by my parents the opportunity to go to a summer camp called Wellspring at the time, later evolved into Empowered Wellness. I've worked there throughout my 20s, very grateful to come back and give back. But it's a weight loss, health, and wellness program that gives or teaches young adults, teenagers, kids how to lose weight, maintain weight, and develop a healthier relationship to food, to exercise. And the early days of this program were a little bit behind the current times, and understandably the science was evolving when it comes to diet science. And so it was much more perpetuating of a diet mentality. And that is the sort of yo-yo effect that happens when you restrict, and you then inevitably, because restriction doesn't work after, it's not a sustainable solution. Ultimately, you have to find sustainable lifestyle shifts, attitude shifts towards exercise and the way that you eat, nutrition, in order to really make a change in your weight. But this in this day and age, it was a little bit more, at least for me, it perpetuated a diet mentality, a yo-yo effect. And so I would go to these summer camps, and I would lose a lot of weight. I would feel really good about myself. I remember entering into freshman year of high school and playing football for the first time. I was on the D team. I didn't have a lot of playing time, but I felt so good to be able to take on something physically that I wouldn't have been able to take on even a year before. I went from, to give you perspective, I was probably 5'10" at the time. I was, 260 before camp, and I moved down to 230. And I think even through my freshman year of high school, I went down to like 215, 210. Well, there's numbers. But for me at the time, like, I was very much motivated by what the other sex was thinking of me, as many young people and all of us are to a certain degree, because we're socially conditioned survival sex machines, for lack of a better term. I'm going to take a sip of water here because of my awkward comment about sex machines. That's why I'm doing it. No, I'm just feeling a little dry in the mouth here. And so that was a huge boost in my confidence in myself. But then as high school went on, I went up and down. And I would go back to these camps every summer, and I would lose weight. And then I'd come back, and I'd have, sophomore and junior year, I struggled to keep the weight off. In fact, I gained weight. I ended up being 290 at my highest my sophomore year. So if you think, going from 260 down to, around 215 up to 290, like the yo-yo effect was happening. And there are a lot of other mitigating factors and reasons why this happened. But as you can imagine, my confidence tanked. I mean, you talk about the sophomore slump, like that was 100 in my experience. It was a rough sophomore year of high school. And so I went through high school, and eventually my junior year, I decided, hey, it's time for me to really do this for myself. A lot of the motivation before had been based on my parents sort of pushing me. And not that I didn't want to go to camp and I didn't like camp, but I really was still primarily motivated by what they were wanting me to do. And so at a certain point, the maturity hit. I had gone up and down enough and been sick of this shit that I was, they say that, the fear of change has to be, we have to be more afraid of staying the same in order to get over the fear of change. I really worded that in kind of an interesting way, but you get the point. It's hard to change. It's scary to change. And so shit has to get bad enough where we're like, fuck this, I don't want to stay the same. And I'm ready to take on the challenge of change. And so finally that hit when I was a junior, and I went 2 summers in a row, and I smacked it out of the park. Senior year of high school, I was at the healthiest weight I've ever been. I was running, I was lifting in the gym, learning new ways to fall in love with exercise. But I was still motivated by this weight loss mindset. And though my senior year was this really beautiful new experience for me, and this new sense of confidence grew in me, and when I went to college, I carried that forth with me, I was still functioning hooked on external validation. I was still motivated by what other people thought of me. And what this created in me was a short-lived and ultimately exhausting relationship to exercise and nutrition. Because when I was in college, I was able to keep the weight off because I would get a Subway 6-inch sub with minimal toppings, which was, like the OG kind of calorie counting fast food option that I could, pay attention to my calories and make sure that I was, on a calorie deficit. And okay, sippy time. Coffee time also. Pauses are good. It's okay. We don't have to run it. We don't have to run through this. And I invite you to pause too whenever I pause. Feel your feet on the ground. Be alive. Know that you're alive. Okay. Coffee's getting the juices going. Here we go. So, as I'm going through college, I'm keeping the weight off. I'm doing air quotes if you're listening. I'm feeling confident in myself. And as I move through college and into the years after college, I start to meditate. I started to meditate when I'm about 23, so it's a couple years after college. And the reason I started to meditate is because I felt like something was off. At this time I was living in New York City, and I was a healthy weight, quotes, air quotes, based on what I would expect and want for myself. But something just wasn't clicking, and I had been turned on to meditation by a friend, and I gave it a go, and I started exploring the inner world that I had yet to really investigate. And what I realized was that though I could look at myself in the mirror and see someone who, if I were using the comparative standards of society around me, the pictures of what healthy means, air quotes again, for the male body, I was thin, or maybe not thin, but I was thinner than I've ever been. And for all intents and purposes, if I were to zoom out, and I zoom out now, I should have been okay with that. That should have been enough. But the person that I saw in the mirror was never enough. And it was only when I started meditating and really being able to become mindful of my thoughts and the beliefs and the emotions that were happening underneath the surface that the ice castle, the unsustainable foundation of how I had built a, air quotes, healthy lifestyle to, lose and maintain weight was really unsustainable and actually quite painful, because I was pressuring myself to go to the gym. I was pressuring myself to eat a certain way, and it was all motivated by what? It was motivated by what other people thought of me, specifically the opposite sex. And this is perpetuated by societal standards. It's perpetuated by Hollywood. It's perpetuated by what we see in marketing. Marketing is definitely perpetuating this. I mean, they're purposely doing it. And also by magazines. We see images of what we think, quote unquote, healthy should look like. And the promises that said, air quotes, healthy, offer us are supposed to be attention from the opposite sex, money, wealth, relationships, you name it. They say if you look like this, you get to be healthy. And so what happens when you're a young person and you get this messaging, and of course you want to fit in, and of course you want to be attractive and have attention your way. That's normal. And yet before we develop a really central relationship within ourselves, it's so easy to get stuck, pulled outside of ourselves by those motivations to an extent that it's addicting. It's the attention seeking. It is a motivating factor in our lives to look to what other people think of us and to want to be seen in a positive light. But it is an unsustainable one. And so what I realized in this moment was, wow, I'm hooked on, I wouldn't say that I realized it in this moment, but I realized it in hindsight as I have continued to do the work. But this moment was crucial for me because it cracked the egg, the myth that I was hooked on, which was that if my body looks a certain way, and if I continue to behaviorally ensure that my body looks a certain way, I'll be happy. And I wasn't confident. I wasn't confident in who I was. I had the air quotes body that I thought I was supposed to have, that I was being sold, and I wasn't confident. I wasn't happy. And thus began my journey over the past 10 years, which has deepened exponentially and progressively of diving into the self, inside which we can find true confidence. And over time, and there's so many pieces of the equation here, I'm not going to go super into them, because the point I want to make is that it is not so much about how you look, because how you look is based on what others see. And if we are motivated by, if we are trying to cultivate a relationship to life, a confident, loving, empowered relationship to life, if our primary motivation is what other people see, how other people think of us, we are going to indefinitely be stuck, pulled outside of ourselves, pulled outside the seat of our power, pulled outside the possibility of true confidence, because that true confidence is within. And again, this is not to say that how our body looks cannot contribute positively to our confidence, but more importantly, it's how our body feels, because it's the energy, it's the attention. These are the capacities to be able to meet life confidently, to be able to cultivate the skills, the mindset, to be able to take action. These are the things that are going to build a really fulfilling and self-loving, empowered life. And if you look around, there are plenty of people who are bigger, who are confident in themselves. And so what does that say about the myth, the misconception that confidence is dependent on how we look and that we fit a certain bill that we're being sold? So the invitation here is to reflect. How am I relating to my body? Am I relating to my body and the aesthetics of my body through the eyes of what other people see? Am I fixated too much on having my body fit a certain mold so that other people can validate me, so that I can feel that sense of acceptance or attention or attraction from the external world? And if so, and in what areas? Because I'm not saying that I'm completely unhooked from this, because it's a normal social conditioning. We're creatures, we're sex machines, we're creatures wired for survival and to be attracted to the opposite sex. And to attract the opposite sex is absolutely a part of what moves us forward. So we can't really avoid that. But if we are being overfixated on that drive and motivated too much by it, it can be harmful. And so checking with yourself, where can I loosen that? How much could I loosen that? In what way could I turn my attention back to myself and focus on cultivating that love and acceptance that I'm looking for? How can I validate myself? How can I find myself attractive? This is not meaning that you need to go out there and be asexual, but as a practice, one thing that you can do, when you hear those love songs that are singing about the perfect partner, sing those love songs towards yourself. Cultivate that love and that attention within, because you are an infinite source of it, as much as I am, as much as the next person is. We just have to wake up and realize it. And if we're fixated, if we're focused on what other people think about us, and in this context through the lens of how our bodies look, we're going to stay stuck. We're going to stay stuck. You have to turn inward. And the beautiful thing is that when you do turn inward, that's when the motivation, the self-love, and the desire to make actual sustainable, love-motivated change in your body. Because when you turn inward and start to love on yourself and give yourself that validation that you may be seeking in the outside world, naturally you're like, fuck yeah, I'm deserving. Fuck yeah, I want to feel good. I want to move well. I want to look good. And from that place, that's where you really get to create the body that you want. And it'll last because it becomes an underlying belief that I'm deserving of a body that works well, that feels good, is attractive, is desirable, is deserving. But you have to change. You have to change the inner territory for it to be sustainable. They can happen at the same time. Again, for me, I went body first, turned inward, and now I've been doing them simultaneously together for the past 10 years. And things are looking up. Things feel good. I'm not perfect. I'm not completely confident in everything about my body, but that's okay. It's not about that. It's not about perfectionism. So I invite you to take this in, get inspired, get reflective, and turn your attention inward. Figure out, how can I better love myself and my body today? Thank you for listening. I love you. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful day.